Jared Goff, when he got traded to Detroit, was left for dead. Okay, he was considered a throw-in in that deal with a bloated contract, and a lot of people just dismissed him in the immediate aftermath of that. And I think that I'm guilty of that to a certain extent. I think that was kind of the conventional wisdom about it. And he has responded by playing some very good football over the last couple of years, especially within the confines of that offense. In your mind, can the Lions win the Super Bowl with Jared Goff? And maybe not this year, but moving forward. Because at a certain point here, there's going to have to be a decision made about Jared Goff and how he fits into the long-term plans of that franchise. And I'm wondering how you see him as part of that equation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he absolutely can win a Super Bowl with the Detroit Lions. Like, I think he's got enough to him. I think he's got enough stuff to him. I think that they've surrounded him with the right offensive scheme. Now this is sort of a tricky question. We talked about it before. It's like, does Ben Johnson stay? Probably not. Now, what's he going to do under a new offensive coordinator? Because him and Ben Johnson have been clicking, man. So I think that's a huge factor that we can't really answer. Like, is Ben Johnson going to get a job? Probably. But if he doesn't, then yeah, they can win a Super Bowl. But no, I think that within the right scheme, and honestly, Goff's taken a LA team to Super Bowl. Like, I think that he can do it again. And I think
but that's to me, that's what's the fascinating consideration. Okay. The Rams make that move, whether fair or unfair, in the way that they kind of cast Goff aside. They made that move because
cast him off.
He was done. Sean McVay was done with Jared Goff, but they made that move because in their minds, they needed a quarterback who could give them more outside of the structure of what the offense provided.
Yeah.
And I think even if you're encouraged and excited about what that offensive structure has looked like in Detroit, it feels like we're going to arrive at a similar conversation because Ben Johnson's going to get stripped away. Some of these offensive skill position players are going to get more expensive. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be up for a contract extension this offseason. Penei Sewell is going to be up for a contract extension this offseason. Jared Goff has been totally reasonable in terms of what he's cost the Lions. If you look at that contract over the last 4 years, it's essentially been 4 years, $100 million on average. $25 million a year for the quarterback play he's given them with a young, cheap team and Ben Johnson. You can live with that. They've been really good in those circumstances. But if you take away some of the pieces of that, it's harder to succeed because what he needs everything to be pristine around him. And I don't even mean that as a dig at Jared Goff. When things are great around him, he can rip that shit, man. But he doesn't scramble. He doesn't make off-schedule plays. He is dead last in the amount of value he's created as a scrambler this year among all NFL quarterbacks. He is 30th in the amount of EPA he has created outside of the pocket. Like, he is what he is. And so if you chip away at the house that you can build for him, what does he end up looking like? And I think that has to be the question that the Lions ask themselves moving forward. I don't know the answer because I totally understand the Lions landing in a spot where they say, we can win with this guy. We know what he is. We like his presence in the building. We can win with this guy. I just wonder how dangerous that is when he's going to be asking for the Daniel Jones contract in 6 months.
Yeah, and I think he'll get it. I think he'll get it. And I think, honestly, this comes down to who is – so your beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And the beholder right here is Brad Holmes. Brad Holmes loves him some Jared Goff. So he's got that going for him. And if he can find a creative play caller that'll come in and pretty much just run the exact same scheme as Ben Johnson, or maybe they elevate somebody who's in the building. I just think the pieces around Goff and the coaching staff from Dan Campbell, Mark Brunell, I think has done like a really good job that doesn't get talked about enough. And just the former players that Dan's brought in and just sort of stuck to his guns.
Their offensive line is clearly very well coached. It's a lot of really impressive detail in what that offense looks like.
Yeah, and I think that as long as he's in a dome for 10 games out of the year, then you're good. Like, it's like the best of both worlds. You're in a dome. You got Brad Holmes as your GM. They're going to pay Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think that they're headed in the right direction. And I mean, there were so many other chances that they could have drafted or gone away from him or said, hey, but from the second that Goff got in that building, man, Brad Holmes, like, credit to him. He was just like, this is our guy. Like, this wasn't just some throw in. We want Jared Goff. I believe in Jared Goff. And he's made me a believer because he's playing pretty damn good ball right now.
I always am wary of what it looks like for your franchise when you commit yourself to a quarterback who doesn't rise above his circumstances and you pay that guy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a dig. There are certain quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff. I love watching them play when the circumstances are good, but you need to build something beautiful around them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what does that look like moving forward? I understand the Lions wanting to commit to that. And if they do end up giving him that Daniel Jones contract this offseason, I understand why they would. Where you have Jared Goff and is a known commodity. He's given you what he's given you. You drafted Hendon Hooker as kind of a developmental. Maybe this could work out if we have to move off from Jared Goff eventually. It's another dice roll. I understand the set of bets that they have made. I just think that after this season, and if Ben Johnson leaves, and if some of these guys start to get a little bit more expensive, it's going to be a really similar conversation to the one we had about Goff in Los Angeles, except Sean McVay was still there.
So do you think that if Ben Johnson gets a job, it'd be crazy if he's not, because I feel like there's going to be 9 to 10 openings, and he's
He'll get one
easily
if he
one of the
wants one.
Yeah, if he wants one, right? And they pay their guys that do you think that Goff will have as good of a year if they have similar play structure around him if Ben Johnson's not the guy calling the plays? Do you think he would have, and Goff will have a good year? And do you pay Goff that money, that Daniel Jones contract?
I think I probably would if I were the Lions. I think I probably would, based on what he's given you, based on it's a safe bet in that the floor is theoretically sort of high, but it's a risky bet because committing those sorts of resources, and not even just the resources, it's the opportunity cost. It's the multiple years potentially of your franchise and the young years and some of the cheap years of these surrounding pieces that you have that you're spending on Jared Goff instead of developing another quarterback. So I do think that there is some certainty to it, but I also don't think it comes without risk. So I would do it because based on some of the intangible aspects of it, what he is in the building, what he's been to the franchise, all of those things, and just the stabilizing force that he's been. But I definitely think that there's a lot of risk involved in committing that deal to him moving forward, especially when you remove the Ben Johnson piece from all of this that to me feels like a very important piece.
It's just like maybe it's just the recency bias of me and of the Lions, but like, they're finally good again, man. And it's so fun to watch.
Hard to let go of that.
And
it's hard to let go of that.
It's so hard to let go. And with evaluating quarterbacks, such a crapshoot, let's say they go and draft a quarterback in the first round that doesn't pan out. You've set your franchise back 4 or 5 more years, and then you go back to free agency. So I think that's what a lot of these GM types are doing. Like, they're going with the safe bet to know that we can win with Jared Goff. And that's okay that if they don't play with outside of the scheme, like, we know what we're getting. And right now you're getting a top 12 or 13 quarterback in the league that's playing the way he's been playing, like maybe a top 10. And so I think that to me is why I say it's a safe bet, because you just don't know what you're getting. Like, you don't, if you're not keeping Jared Goff, you're not going to go and get another veteran free agent, right? It's Goff, or you're starting over with a rookie. And so I just don't like, unless he's like you're drafting in the top 3, a guy that's a franchise guy. I just hate starting all over again with how far they've come and how long they've been bad and all this stuff. And the Lions have never had a rookie quarterback since Matthew Stafford. It's been like 20 years since. So it's just like all that plays into my mindset on it.
I get it. And I totally understand every bit of that argument. And I don't think that they would move on from him this offseason. He's got 1 year left on his contract. It would be about whether you'd extend him or you'd be willing to go into that lame duck year next year. I've been talking about this and kind of trotting it out with people over the last week or so, and I almost hesitate to even bring this up, but I think it's a worthwhile question as we consider this. Do you think it's harder to build an elite infrastructure where the 10th best quarterback in the league could potentially win you a Super Bowl, or do you think it's harder to find an elite quarterback?
Oh my God, it's harder to find an elite quarterback.
I think that's true too.
Oh my God.
So these teams that are
hell bent, there's only so many.
I think that's how I feel too. And so these teams that say, okay, we know what this guy can do when we put the right pieces around him. Let's make that bet. The Miami Dolphins
Yeah.
are going to be set to make that exact same bet and have this exact same conversation
Yeah.
this offseason about Tua. He's going to get paid more than Jared Goff probably because of how young he is and because of the production. But those sorts of bets where you say, listen, we know that we can be a great offense, truly like an elite offense with this guy if we put the right pieces around him. Let's bet on the pieces. I understand making that. I understand landing on that conclusion, even if I think there's also dangers in thinking that way.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. Really good way. I agree. Golf all the way, baby. Let's go.
I've said this multiple times this year. Saturday was another example of this. I love watching him play in this offense. He is what he is.
He's fun.
He is what he is. When I looked up that scramble number and I saw that he had just the fewest scrambles in the NFL this year,
I probably could have told you that.
Of course, it's true. But when you see it all, it's just
when you see it on paper,
and it was. I went back and I started watching the Broncos game before we are gonna have this conversation. I was like, I'm gonna watch the whole game. I'm gonna have all these notes and be like, okay, what did I learn about Jared Goff in this game? I watched 3 drives and I was like, what am I doing? I know exactly what he is. Like,
that's what he is.
And you know exactly what he is. And that comes with drawbacks, but it also comes with benefits. And I think that push and the pull is what the Lions are going to have to consider as they go about this. And I say that, I'm pretty confident they're going to commit to him moving forward. This is more of a thought exercise than it is a projection about
a good one.
what the Lions are going to do.
Yeah.